Why does God make himself known to some people and not others? I prayed for so many years for God to make himself known to me and to give me peace, to let me know that he's there and he loves me and that I was on the right path. I have a very vivid memory of doing this as young as the age of 8. And throughout my life, I continued to serve God and do what he would have wanted, all the while receiving no peace and no comfort and no love, no matter how tough the times were. Meanwhile, friends and family were feeling God's love every week at church. Unfortunately, my experience is not unique. I've heard many others have the same experience, the lack of love and comfort. According to many Christian doctrines, God is our Father and is all loving. So why the lack of acknowledgement and love? If my child needed me, I'd move heaven and earth to be there for them. But God can't manage to send a little comfort and love? If you can explain this mystery, call us because the show starts now.
Hello, hello, hello. Today is September the 29th, 2024, and I am your host, Richard Gilliver, and joining me today is Aaron Jensen. Aaron, how the devil are you?
I am doing very well. I'm excited to be here, Richard. Thanks for having me.
Very excited to have you on as well. Aaron, for those of you who don't know, and shame on you if you don't, is one of the many fantastic hosts of the non-profits. So if you've not seen his work, when we've finished here, don't do it now. Go over and have a look at that show. Subscribe over there and have a look at that. Aaron, I started on the non-profits with the ACA as well.
Yeah.
So tell me and tell the audience what it is about that show, which is so great to be a part of.
It's great to be part. We talk about current events, news stories, things that are happening out in the world, and our reactions to them from an atheist, humanist perspective. And it's a great place to go to see what secular humanists think, why we are against things like anti-abortion laws, why we're against certain things you see out in the world. And we've got usually 3 or 4 people a week, and we just have really good discussions on all sorts of wide-ranging, varying topics. And the discussions are really, really engrossing.
Absolutely, they are. As I say, if you've not seen the non-profits, get yourself over there and watch that show. I was a part of it for quite a long time and had some great conversations over there. But we're not over there now, we're here.
I believe it's known as the flagship show.
Some might say that. Yeah, some might say that. Those some being Johnny P. Angel, yeah.
Yes. Reference to old topics.
Talk Heathen is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 non-profit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. Talk Heathen is a live call-in show, and we have open lines. So get your calls in at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/callth. But before we get to calls, of which they are beginning to stack up nicely, It's time for our Talk Heathen to Me segment, where we go into the question of the week. And last week we asked you, title a porn movie starring Jesus. And here are your top 3 answers. So let's get them up on screen and see where we are with those. So Jamie Slemmer 9211, I'm terrible with names, I'm sorry Jamie, says adult movie title, Crucifixion Hung for Days. That would do it. That would certainly do it. Aaron, what do you think of that one?
Yeah, I think all of these are going to be a little...
I must say at this juncture, there was a point, and when people first started commenting on this on the comments in the YouTube section, that someone did point out that quite the things they'd put in had been deleted by YouTube's bots.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
I think we did go down that route a little bit with that. Number 2 is from Shay the Crow, Shaya, and says, in God we thrust. That...
Who doesn't like
that's definitely a double entendre with
who
the
doesn't
old
like
spear.
a really good sexual pun? Yeah,
we like that one. And number 1 is Belgarath 6388, who says adult movie starring Jesus, The Last Sucker. We like that one as well, Aaron. What do you think of that one?
I'm not.
I don't think you're feeling the enthusiasm that I am for this.
I am an ex-Christian, so I'm trying to come out, but woo, yeah, those are really good. Those are really, really good. Yeah. Usually I save jokes like that for private company. So out here on the live show on the interwebs, it's yeah.
See, what you've got to do is you've got to lower yourself to talk heathen standards. Bring yourself down from on high on the flagship show and bring yourself down to our level.
Yeah. I appreciate the puns. The puns are great.
The prompt for this week, for next week, is what's a bad reason to summon a demon? So enter your best answer below the video in the comments, and next week we will reveal the top 3 answers. But of course, I've got to ask you, Aaron, what's a bad reason to summon a demon?
To convince an atheist that God exists. Because if a demon exists, then God has to exist, right? Well, unfortunately, the atheist is just going to say, that doesn't prove that God exists. It only proves that a demon exists.
It does indeed, and I think there are many cultures out there in religions or belief systems that would accept demons and not gods. I know many atheists who believe in ghosts and demons and things, but don't necessarily believe in a god.
Yeah, demons are not particular to Christianity or even deity beliefs. Yep.
Absolutely. So that is a great answer. I'm looking forward to seeing what the audience comes up with, because as you have seen, we tend to get a little close to the bone, to the boner this week, as it seems to have been. Give your best answer and tune in next week where we reveal the top 3. Of course, we could not do this show on our own. We just sit here and talk. There are other people involved in this, so let's go to the crew cam and see the fantastic people behind the show.
Yeah.
Or some of the fantastic. Look at that lovely lot. Aren't they lovely? I could say nicer things about some of those people than I could about others. and the waggy finger will let you know exactly what I'm thinking of. So we couldn't do the show without those people. Everybody who is involved in the ACA does a really, really important job. It's not just the hosts, we're the ones who get a million friend requests after we've been on every episode. But, there are a lot of other people who do a really great job here, from, just the timestamp writers, everybody. We have so many people working so hard behind the scenes. So give a big shout out to everyone. Yep. It's not just on us. The crew especially do an amazing job.
We have the easy job. We just sit here and flap our gums. Is that what I hear some of the hosts say? We just flap our gums. Just show up.
That's exactly what we do.
Talk.
Yeah, and
we're not doing the actual work.
We are not doing the work. So we are going to take a call, and I'm going to take. We've got some interesting ones. Let's take this one and get it out of the way. We've got Jackie from Mississippi. Is this the Jackie who's been calling, or is this someone else? This is going to be interesting. The Zizeskin case, I don't even know what this, against secular gender ideology. So let's have a look at this. I'm going to see if it's the Jackie who has been calling, because I've got a few words to preempt this if it is.
Yeah, it's
hello.
So the Zizekian in this case is referring to the Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek and his criticism of transsexual ideologists.
Right, Jackie, I want to preempt this because I've been on the show the last 2 weeks behind the scenes when you've called. And I'm going to do something I never, ever do. And I'm going to tell you that I want you to take a different subject than the one you've called in with. And the reason I'm going to do that is because the last 2 weeks you've called, giving all this, you've been quoting Jordan Peterson, you've been quoting all these different philosophers, you're doing it again today. And the last 2 weeks I've asked you to do the same thing each time. Give us your position on something.
This is my position.
Right. So what I want you to do is, I do not want you to name any other philosophers. I don't want you to name anybody. I want you to give me your position and your own reasoning. I will tell you now, if I hear Jordan Peterson's name mentioned once during this call, I will drop you. If you're so fascinated with Jordan Peterson, get him to call the show. I'm not bothered about your adulation for him. So let's have a good call, but let's hear your position on it.
Yeah, so my position here, I do get it from Freudian psychoanalysis, but it is my own. Basic claim of transsexual ideologists that a man can consciously choose to become a woman, or a woman can consciously choose to become a man, is wrong because, like Freud said, part of our sexual identity is structured and embedded in our subconscious, and as such, the choice to choose a sexual identity is not something an active subject can do on a conscious level. It's part of our subconscious, right? The Oedipus complex, for example, or the Electra complex in girls, I believe sexual identity is influenced in our subconscious. Not the same that Freud said, but similar.
Okay, I agree. People don't choose to become, to identify as a woman or a man. I absolutely agree with you. It's not a choice. I'm completely on level with you. I don't think it's a choice. Aaron, what are your thoughts on it?
I believe it. I agree. It's not a choice. We're born the way we're born. We identify how we identify within the society in which we live. And I've never seen any evidence to support the fact that we choose any of those things.
So we seem to be on the same page, Jackie. This is a good start.
Well, I thought secular humanists, which you guys are, believe that transsexual identities are valid and consciously choice and fluid and all this.
That's not a conscious choice. Jackie, I'm going to ask you a question. Dude, feel free not to answer it. I don't want to get too personal. Would you consider yourself, I'm a cis straight male. Would you consider yourself a cis straight male?
I am a male who is predominantly attracted to females.
Yeah, so am I. Could you choose, Jackie? Could you choose, just as a matter of conscious choice, to be attracted to men instead of women?
No.
I agree with you. I couldn't either. So you've answered your own question. We appear to be completely on the same page with this. I don't really have any argument with you. I don't think people choose it. I do object a little bit to you insisting that I'm a secular humanist because you don't know whether I am a secular humanist. But apart from that, we appear to agree people don't choose, what gender they are. Aaron, have you got any comments?
No, I think we're totally on board. When people like to make these arguments about, people choose their sexuality or people choose their gender, I like to really focus it down onto one sexuality. Like, okay, you're heterosexual. Do you like redheads? Do you like blondes? Do you like skinny? Do you like athletic? All those things are all preferences that we're all born with. We don't choose what we prefer and what we like. And so if we widen that out from heterosexuality to all the different sexuality, to all the different genders, it just makes more sense that we just don't choose any of that. We're just born that way.
And on that note, by the way, I prefer all of the above.
Critical transsexual.
Sorry, Jackie, go on.
I thought you guys were broadly, from what I've seen, pro-transsexual line, but I may have been wrong.
What does that mean, pro-transsexual line? Does that mean we're pro-transsexual? I mean, because I am pro people expressing their gender identity the way they want to express it.
As am I. What has that got to do with people choosing it or not?
Well, if the transsexual claim is, I'm a man or I'm a woman and it's all fluid and it's socially constructed and I can change and there's no part of it which is evolutionary psychology, that is the woke claim.
You seem to... Okay, so I'm going to interrupt you again. So here's what woke means to me, and I'm sure it means this to most people. The original definition of woke came out from the Black community, and it meant essentially just giving respect to people for, the way they are. Essentially, that's the black and white of it, just respecting people. It's now become a wider thing, and, to include the wider community, not just people of color. So woke basically means you respect people for who they are and the decisions they make. That's not a bad thing, is it? Are you against that?
Well, it depends on what type of decisions they make. But nowadays, woke has a pretty specific connotation in cultural Marxist politics.
Not to me, it doesn't. You seem to be operating on a different operation of the word, which doesn't match the dictionary definition.
Well, I'm talking about the colloquial definition I think most people online use.
Most people who I can interact with online share the same definition as me. You seem to be, are you going to certain places that use a different definition, Jackie?
Well, yes, like you said earlier, JBP. I'm not going to mention name because you said you'll ban me if I...
I didn't say I'd ban you. I said I'd drop you the call. Jackie, I really, really want to be... Look, I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. Since you've started calling the show, we've had countless people call for me to ban you from this show. People are saying, get rid of him. You know, people even say they skip the call when they know you're on. I want to give you the benefit of the doubt. I don't want to ban you. I don't want to drop you. What I do want is a good conversation with you, an honest conversation with you where you're expressing your opinion, not the opinion of someone else. Now, a large problem seems to be over the past few weeks that a lot of the things you're saying on your own opinion, it seems to be stuff you're parroting from Jordan Peterson and others. And an example of why I think this and why it's not your opinion is when, you know, Ben and Scott brought me on last week when you were talking about Eastern religions. Now, I happen to know a few things about Eastern religions. And when I tried digging down into what you were claiming about Eastern religions, I'm sorry to say you were wrong on a lot of those things. So it seems that parroting people is not equipping you very well for these conversations. If we have a conversation about your opinion, the way you've thought through it personally, using your own reasoning and the conclusions you've come to, we can have a much, much better conversation than parroting somebody else. And we can have a much more honest conversation. If you don't know anything about Eastern religions, don't mention Eastern religions. Or say, it's my understanding that this, but I may be wrong, rather than asserting it as fact. And we can have these much, much better conversations when we talk like this. And that's all I want you to do. I don't want to ban you. I don't want to drop you. I don't want to shout at you every week. What I want to do is have a good conversation with you. Aaron, sorry, I've seemed to be bringing you into a kind of a private argument here.
No,
but
it's fine.
Have you got a response to that as well?
I just have a question. Like, what's wrong with what you seem to be arguing, Jackie, that being woke is a bad thing? Why do you think being woke is a bad thing?
Because woke, at least as defined by most people in the online culture war, involves regressive leftist things like collectivist identity politics, authoritarianism, advocating for censorship, etc. Okay,
those are some big words and some big arguments. I don't think that those things have anything to do with woke. Being woke means when people share their experiences, you believe them. You believe what their experience is. What's wrong with believing people when they share? Hey, you know, this is my gender. This is how I want to express my gender. How does that? Why is that? The people that make that have made it that political are not the people who want to make the country more woke. It's people that are against inclusion, the people that are against equity, that are trying to make woke be a bad thing. What's your response to that?
Well, so first of all, that's not how most people. But second, and even in your case, it is wrong to say,
Jackie, I want to stop you there. I want to stop you again. You keep saying that's not how most people view this. Now, I can say from my experience that the majority of people who I interact with online do use woke the same as I do. In that way, you seem to have a different understanding of that. So rather than saying, and this is what I mean about kind of correcting you, it's not about trying to insult your intelligence. I'm just trying to give you better tools to have these conversations with. Rather than saying most people, say, in the circles I interact in and the online communities I go to, the majority of people or most people use it in this way. That's not to say that most people use it that way. They're certainly not using it correctly in regards to its dictionary definition. So they seem to be, as Aaron said, politicizing this word. And it doesn't give good conversations to do that. You know, we're all about having good, honest conversations here. We're not trying to politicize anything. You know, when we use the word woke, what we're talking about is respecting people. And just to give you an example of what I mean by that, doesn't mean you have to agree with everything they say. You know, I respect that you have a belief in whatever your religious position is, in your belief in God. I don't agree with you on it, but I respect that you have that belief. I'm going to criticize the elements, some of the elements of that, and I'm going to criticize, you know, maybe some of your reasoning of that with reasons of my own. But I'm not just going to jump on you and say, you are wrong because I do not agree with you. You're not wrong because I don't agree with you. If I believe you're wrong, I'm going to give you specific reasonings. And this seems to be the difference between the kind of circles you're running in and the circles I'm running in. Whereas the circles you're running in seem to just want to disagree with people and define things in a certain way to politicize it. You know, what I'm all about is having a legitimate conversation with someone and trying to dig down into what they think and how they assess things. Already today, we've touched upon a way that you could correct yourself in conversations. And I'm not dismissing you when I say that. I'm trying to give you better tools. If you can say, well, in these circles, this is what I encounter, rather than just a broad brush, everybody thinks this. I could broad brush and say every Christian believes in the Trinity, but I would be wrong by doing that because not every Christian believes in the Trinity. That's just the Orthodox Christian opinion. So we've got to be very, very careful when we're having these conversations, these nuanced conversations about exactly what we're saying. And that's what I'm trying to get across to you. I'm not trying to be aggressive to you or dismissive of you. I want us to have a good conversation, and it is my aim. You are my project, Jackie. It is my aim to have these conversations. If you want to keep calling the show, whether I'm hosting or not, I will jump in, as you full well know. I want to get you to the point where you can have a conversation with your opinions and give your reasoning.
Okay. Are you done?
I am. You may talk.
Okay. So what was the original question again? It's been so long that I don't even remember.
Aaron, do you want to repeat your question?
The other host?
Yeah, what's wrong with being woke? You seem to think that being woke is a bad thing. And from our perspective, being woke is a good thing because it's more inclusive. It advocates for equality. And so what's wrong with being woke?
Well, because not all decisions are made equal. Some choices are worse for an individual and societal health than others.
Okay, well, can you give us a specific example of some choice? That's a very general statement. We can't really dive into general statements. Can you give us a specific example of a choice that a personal individual can make that we should not allow them to make for society's good? Because that sounds that's what it sounds like you're arguing for, is that we should be able to restrict somebody's choices for the benefit of society.
You're going to let me speak, please.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Jackie, I'm going to interrupt, and I'm going to say no, I'm not. You don't. Aaron was trying to finish his question to you. You don't jump in and say, "Can you let me speak, please?" You wait till he's finished, and then you respond. This is how conversations work. Aaron, have you completed your question?
I have completed my question. Yes, please.
Jackie, please feel free to respond.
Publicly using heroin and discarding the needles in a playground, for example.
Okay, that is a specific topic. So you are against publicly using heroin and disposing needles, and I think I would too. Am against that.
As
Richard?
am I.
Yeah,
okay. Absolutely.
Then you're against including that type of decision or lifestyle. So, okay, good.
Including it in what? What do you mean including it in what?
You're against including that lifestyle. You think that lifestyle is worse than other lifestyles, and so you discriminate against that lifestyle because that decision is harmful to societal health. Okay.
Yes, I think using heroin in general is not going to be beneficial to an individual. So I'm going to support policies and laws that are going to help people not do heroin, and especially not do them in public places.
Okay, so we're against public heroin use because it is dangerous to other people's health and it involves externalities. So in that case, we're against an aspect of inclusion.
Well, I would mostly argue that. Go ahead. Sorry.
If your definition of wokeness is about inclusion and equality of outcome, which is communism, then that's an example where you have no.
Jackie, you are listening to some utter fucking shit, aren't you, sir? You
I hear a lot of talking
do
points.
listen. Yeah, have you listened to anything myself or Aaron have said during this call? Because it doesn't seem like you have. It seems like your brain has been stuck in these communities you seem to be a part of, where, I mean, I don't know. Fortunately, I'm not a part of these communities, but I expect they're all manly men. I expect they all drive pickup trucks and probably don't even fucking wash them. And I'm sure they all carry guns about with them because that's what manly men do. I'm sure I've heard it. I've heard it on the news. That's what people like that do. But it's all a load of fucking shit, sir. It really, really is. You're not doing what I asked you to do. You're not giving us your opinion on the subject. You're returning to these ideas that you've heard about them. So let's have a conversation. Let's just get rid of the term woke completely. Let's just fuck it off out of the door. And let's just talk about respecting people and kind of doing it in such a way that we're not infringing on their rights to be who they are. Notice I say to be who they are, rather than to infringe on their rights to just do any old shit they want to do, regardless of how harmful that is to themselves or society, because we're not talking about that. We're talking about the rights of people to be who they are and express who they are.
Then do you have a specific example of that?
You're the one who called in. Do you?
Well, I don't know if you mean accepting people for who they are. Yes, but I don't know what you mean. So could I have a reference for that?
Well, yeah, I'll give you the reference point of, as I've already raised with you, people who are Christian. People who have a Christian identity. And I'm just picking, if you want to use a different religion, that's fine. I'm just plucking it out of the hat because we talk to more Christians than anybody else. People who have a Christian identity, they have a right to identify as who they are and, live their lives as they see fit in accordance with that, as long as it doesn't infringe upon other people's rights, which I'm sure everybody would agree on. And I'm not against people having a Christian identity and expressing who they are, expressing their Christian kind of values and things in public. I'm not against them doing that. I will have conversations if I disagree with them, but I'm not against the right for them to express who they are. I don't consider them the expression of who they are in and of itself an harmful act. Now, as I said, we can have discussions about what they might do, and that might vary vastly amongst self-identifying Christians as to what specific acts they do. I know many, many Christians who live lives that I don't consider at all harmful to anybody, other than the fact that they have this unjustified belief in a supernatural entity, which I think could possibly harm themselves. But other than that, I know Christians and Muslims and many other religious people who live very, very, according to my standards, very good life. And I respect their right to do that. There are other Christians I know who do have harmful beliefs and want to kind of infringe them on other people. And I would have conversations with them about that. But I do not object to their identity as a Christian. So that's an example of what I'm talking about.
Well, then at that point, then yes, I would agree with you. It's just I don't know how relevant that is because Christians, at least in America and Europe, are not generally speaking persecuted politically. In the Middle East, they are. So it would be more relevant of a discussion in Islamic government countries, but not as much the West. But certainly, if you're just talking broadly about inclusion of what people identify as culturally or politically or theologically, yes. That's just at that point, I don't know how important it is to discuss that topic because people aren't being excluded like that.
So again, we seem to agree. When this is why I want to have these conversations and why I might sometimes come on hard with you, but I want to get to the nitty-gritty because it seems that we actually agree on this. When we're talking about inclusion and people's respecting people for who they are and how they identify, we seem to agree on that, like we did at the start of the call.
Well, my original point of the call was I was going to make the case that Zizek makes against transsexual inclusion.
I'm not bothered what case someone else makes. I'm interested in what you think about something.
Well,
I'm really not interested. I'm not being rude, but I talk about with my peers in religious studies. I talk about philosophy all the time, and unless we're having a specific conversation about Zizek himself and his ideas, then I'm not interested in his ideas when it comes to your opinion of something. I'm interested in your ideas. If you're for someone who seems to be so interested in philosophy, you do a great lot of sucking up to other people and not a lot of expressing your opinion on something. If I'm having a philosophical conversation, and this happens in ethics a lot, if I'm discussing ethics, I don't always, on a lot of ethical subjects, I don't always have a hard and fast opinion. So what I will say in that case is, on this subject, I don't have a hard and fast opinion. We can take this into consideration or we can take that into consideration. We can talk about these different aspects of it. But on those subjects where I do have an opinion, I will say, this is my opinion. I think this because, and I will go into the details of why I think that using my own reasoning. I don't need to quote someone else. And the reason I don't need to quote someone else is because I understand the subject matter enough to talk about it from my own perspective. Aaron, I've been talking quite a lot. I want to give you a chance to jump in as well.
No, I agree, and I think Jackie seems to be holding. Jackie, it seems like you're holding two different thoughts in your head at the same time. On one hand, you agree with us that it's not good, that we should be accepting of people for who they are and for the attributes that they have that they cannot change about themselves. Race, gender, sex, those kinds of attributes that nobody can do anything about. Nobody should be discriminated against or harmed because of those attributes. It seems like you agree with us, but then you also want to argue that there's something about there's some talking points you want to regurgitate or say about how that is somehow also harmful to society at large. So I'm a little bit confused of what you're actually arguing for.
Well, I would argue people should be included regardless of their identity, but I don't believe gender identity specifically can be changed because of psychoanalytic reasons. I believe evolutionary.
Nobody's arguing that you can change your gender identity. Nobody's arguing that one day you wake up and decide, hey, today I'm going to be a Zork, or hey, today I'm going to be this gender, or whatever. Nobody here that you're talking to is arguing that. We're arguing that it doesn't
That's
change.
What trans people claim.
No.
Jackie, I'm going to interrupt you, right? Next time Dr. Ben hosts a show,
call him,
which you had an opportunity to do last week, neither myself or Aaron are trans. Next time Dr. Ben hosts a show, because he is trans and he is a medical doctor, you call the show and you talk to Dr. Ben. You talk to Dr. Ben about this subject, because we seem to be largely agreeing on it. With the way you're phrasing it, when we're trying to, when we unpick everything, we tend to largely agree on stuff. But I want you to talk to Dr. Ben on the subject, because Dr. Ben is a trans person and he can tell you his feelings, and he can tell you, that about his identity and how it's not a choice. And, you're sitting here telling us that, well, it is a choice. Trans people say it is a choice, but it is not. So call the trans person who hosts this show and ask him his opinion.
Yeah, and I also like to say you can hold whatever opinions you want, Jackie. If you don't agree that a trans man is male, then you can hold that opinion, but at least fucking have the respect to use the pronouns that they've asked you to use. It would be just as disrespectful for me to call you she as it would be for you to call Dr. Ben she. I would not do that to you. No. And so I would politely ask that you not do that to other people, regardless of your beliefs, that you give the people the respect that they're asking you to give them at a bare minimum.
It's my ideological belief that Dr. Ben, because they were born female, is
what the fuck does that even mean, Jackie? What does my ideological belief mean?
My belief, my ideology, what I'm convinced of propositionally.
Right. Yes. I don't know how much. Well, I do know how much philosophy you've read because you tell us all. I don't know how much philosophy you've actually kind of taken in and understood, because you keep doing this thing where you keep kind of throwing in extra words where you don't need to. Just look, man, well, you know, I can't speak for Aaron. I've studied enough philosophy that I understand at least the basic concepts. You don't have to throw extra words in there to sound smart. Just say it's my belief. Just say that. That's enough.
Okay, yeah. It's my belief. But if you guys really don't want to talk about transgender or transsexual issues, that's okay. I thought that would be relevant to the broad topic because you guys are also a secular humanist show, and that type of issue does come up.
Well, how does it? I'm just wondering, how does it impact your life to not call someone by their preferred pronouns? Why can't you call? Do that.
Is backed. Because my conviction is they are of the female gender, and she is a nation of pronoun for the female gender. That's that.
Okay, well, it's my conviction that you are also of the female gender, so I'm going to call you she, her.
Yeah, it's also my conviction that you're a dick. Goodbye.
That is also, we'll call you Dick.
I'm bored now. I'm bored. When someone disrespects not only just a show of the host anyway, another human being.
It's just
someone
awful.
who was a very, very good friend of mine like that.
Yeah,
sorry, you can fuck right off. I'm not interested in talking to you. And on that note, as many as you know, look at this for a smooth transition. As many of you know, we have initiated phase 2 of our brick fundraiser. We want to highlight some of the standout orders we have received. This week's featured brick goes out to Preston from Texas, who says, "Our beliefs aren't written in stone." Preston. Thank you for your purchase, Preston. Get yours at tiny.cc/ACA bricks. And we want to hear from you. We want to know what you liked, what you thought was effective, and more importantly, what you thought we could do better. And I'm sure many of you will email and say, "Don't let Jackie call the show." If you want to say that, amongst other things, email us at tv@atheist-community.org and let us know. If you're in Austin, if you're in the Austin area, follow us on Meetup to keep up with community events. You can see what's going on at tiny.cc/ACA Meetup. So we have things like Philosophy Under the Stars, game nights, and many, many more. I know many of the hosts of this show take part in the Dungeons and Dragons games that we have going off. If you join our weekly watch parties at the Free Thought Library on Sundays for live viewings at Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience every Sunday, doors are open at noon. It's a great place for building community, so I've heard. I've not actually been there, so I can't say for certain, but I've heard on pretty good authority. And you can, of course, send a super chat, which I'm about to read out in a second, with a question or comment, and we will read out as many as we can. And on that, I don't see any super chats, and I know we've had some, so
yeah.
I'm going to take another call while the crew get the super chats gathered for us, and we will talk to Jack, who's a theist from Canada. And Jack wants to talk about the ontological argument with different points. I don't know what that means. Jack, hello.
I don't know what that means either.
Hello, my name is Jack, and I'm going to... First of all, what do you know about the ontological argument?
Well, I'd rather you describe it for our audience, and especially if you've got one with different a twist on it, as it seems to be. Give us your rundown of the ontological argument.
Okay, it's okay. How am I going to say this? God is defined as a being that no greater being should be conceived. But if he were to be real, he would be even greater, because obviously something that is real is more impactful than something that isn't, correct?
Just say that again.
If something is real, it has more impact than something that is not.
Not necessarily. Ideas aren't necessarily real, but they have great impact.
Okay, they are.
What do you mean by
real.
real, I guess? What do you mean by real?
Even the internet itself isn't real. It's
very real.
It's just in an abstract sense.
No, the internet is a real fucking thing. There are
So
wires and
are some
cables.
abstract things, yeah. Let's not confuse things that are abstract with not being real.
It's not something you can pick up with your hands. You can pick up a computer, but not the internet.
Well, you could if your hand was big enough, and delicate enough. So, what do you mean by real? Do you mean by something you can actually physically touch in the world? Is that what you mean by real?
If God were real, he would be greater. Whether he's abstract or not, it doesn't matter. If he were real, he would be greater. And it says we can conceive of a God that is real. And that means he has to be real. Otherwise, he wouldn't really be the greatest thing.
Yeah, I'm not following that. That logic doesn't.
I'm not following it either. And I'd rather you not kind of skip past the question Aaron asked you. Do you mean something? Because what is real is a very important question, especially in this kind of case where we're having this conversation. Do you mean, do you consider things that are real only physical objects, or do you consider them? Do you consider the larger sphere of reality, as I would state it, as real, which includes abstract concepts which we can demonstrate are true?
Okay. But what I'm trying to say here is, can you imagine God existing?
Rather you answer the question, sir, to be honest with you. What do you consider reality to be? It's a very important question in regards to, this conversation. So rather than skipping over the question, I'd rather you actually answer the question.
What do I consider reality? I consider reality to be everything around us, in a sense. I mean, that's all I can say. If it exists, it's real. I don't really know what else to say.
Okay, so if you can touch it, it's real, and if we can think it, it's real. But we can think things. I can think of a pink unicorn outside my window, and it's not real. I can look out my window right now and say, nope, there's no pink unicorns, even though I'm thinking it. So.
The unicorn itself is not real, but your thought of one is.
Yes, my thought about it is correct. So you're saying what's real is things we can touch and things we can think, and our actual thoughts are real.
Yeah.
Okay. So now take us through step by step on. So if we can think that God exists, so the thought of God is real. So you're saying the thought of God is real, therefore God is real?
No, I'm saying because God is, by this definition, the greatest being around, and he would be even greater if he were real. And
but you've not defined God. All you've done is said God.
We're saying God is the greatest thing.
What are you defining as God? What are the properties that you're giving for this God? Because you can't just say, well, I define God as the greatest being, because that doesn't list any properties. I can tell you, sir, after certain meals, I can do farts, which are pretty great beings. So that's, that God would have to be pretty impressive to be greater than one of those. What are the properties of this God? So I need the properties to understand how I'm assessing how great this thing is. I can't, as David Hume would say, and I'm doing what I told the last caller not to do, as David Hume would say, we can only kind of envision things to exist as if we understand those attributes to begin with. I'm paraphrasing. We can't just pluck something out of the air that we've never had any experience of whatsoever. This is called, in regards to the self, this was Hume's bundle theory of the self. So we need to understand the kind of attributes that this God possesses before we can decide whether it's the greatest thing possible. I can imagine some pretty great things.
He's great in the sense that we cannot conceive all of him. Kind of like it's trying to describe the properties of dark matter. I'm sure you've heard of that. I mean, describing the properties of God is similar in a sense.
Also, God is like dark matter. God is equal to dark matter.
He's not dark matter. Trying to describe him is like trying to describe dark matter.
So if you can't describe him, if you do not understand, the very concept you're trying to ascribe as the greatest being, how can you say it's the greatest being? If it's only partially available to you, how do you know that the part that's not available to you is great? It might seem that, like every cloud has a silver lining. You might see the silver lining of God and think, fucking hell, that's impressive. I think that's pretty darn great. And then when you get past the silver lining, you think, actually, the rest of it's a bit shit. So how do you know if you've only got a partial understanding of something, that the rest of that thing is actually the greatest thing?
Because, we don't have 100% factual stuff on everything. But
I agree.
I agree.
Say whether or not something's pretty great or not.
I agree. But how can you then, if you by your own admission know that you can't fully give a description of this thing, that you can't fully understand it, how can you then say, well, it's the greatest thing? And I'm sure, just to kind of put this into perspective from a philosophical point of view, I'm sure
faith comes into play.
Okay, but that's not an argument for something being the greatest thing because you're employing faith on it. And I'm sure, and I might have got this wrong, so people please correct me if I do, because I want to be corrected if I'm wrong. I'm sure Anselm was the first person who came up with the ontological argument, or the first version of the ontological argument, who was around in the 11th century. I'm sure he actually came back and said, actually, I don't think, we can define God as the greatest thing because we cannot fully define God. I'm sure he said that later. Please correct me, people, if I'm wrong. But I think it's very interesting that, the person, if that is correct, if the person who first came up with this argument later actually thought about it later and said, actually, we can't define God. We can't define God as the greatest being because we cannot define God. We do not have full understanding of God. So how can you define it? Your argument seems to be, well, it seems a bit good. But, there are lots of celebrities who seemed very good throughout history, who've then later on to be found to be like traffickers and child abusers behind the scenes when we find out a little bit more about them. So if you, by your own admission, cannot say with definitive certainty, this being, all of this being, is perfect, is the greatest being, how can you then say, well, I know for a fact I'm making an argument for this, because you do not have that information by your own admission?
There's enough evidence out there as I can tell if that can show his greatness. Look how big the universe is supposed to be. If someone were to create our entire universe, that'd be the greatest thing by default.
Yeah, so you're making a logical leap. You're saying the universe is big, therefore somebody created the big universe, they must be great. Well, you have to. There's a leap there from the universe is big to somebody created it. Do you see that? That there's a leap there. You have to demonstrate, even though the universe is big, doesn't also mean that somebody created it. Those are two different claims, so to speak. And so, just because it's big doesn't mean it was created. So you have to demonstrate the universe was created to demonstrate that there's a creator. Does that make sense?
I'm not going to jump into the cosmological argument because I want to stay on topic. But, I mean, as a theist, I believe, it was created by a God.
Okay. So what do you want to get back on track with? That God there's a great God. He's the greatest, therefore he exists. That's what it seems like. I still haven't heard an argument other than God is the greatest thing, therefore he exists. Or it exists.
Along the lines of, if we can conceive of a God that doesn't exist, and we can conceive of one that does, which one is greater? Which one is a better God?
I can conceive of lots of gods that exist.
Yeah, there's thousands of gods that people have conceived of.
My field of study is religion, philosophy, and ethics. My particular kind of area of expertise is Buddhism. And contrary to a lot of popular belief, there are gods within Buddhism. There are gods within Hinduism. There's a God in Islam, which is, and again, contrary to popular belief, different to the Christian God. There are gods in the early Canaanite traditions. There are gods in the Egyptian traditions. We have many, many different gods proposed. So just conceiving of a God neither says that it exists to begin with, nor tells us how great that being is.
And if it's as great as possible, you can't get any greater than that.
Yeah, but you're just saying shit now.
Greater.
Yeah, that doesn't tell us anything about. That's not an argument for a particular God. Just saying the greatest possible. But you've also said that you cannot know everything about this God. If you cannot know everything about this God, you cannot, by definition, state that it is the greatest possible thing you can conceive of, because there are things about it you don't know. And those things might be contrary to the things that you do know. Even if you conceive, everything you conceive about this God might be absolutely perfect in your mind. But if you're saying there are things I don't know about it, you cannot say that that God is the greatest thing you can conceive, because by your own admission, there are things you do not know about it. You do not know that those things are not contrary to the thing that you can conceive.
Well, you got me there. I guess I can't think of things that I don't know about.
No, Jack, and look, and I don't want to sound like I'm beating up on you. I've actually appreciated this call a lot, and I very, very much appreciate that stance. I'd like to talk to you further. I'm going to let you go shortly because we do have other callers. But before you go, I do want to say to you, go back and have a think about it. Because you're a great caller. You're very honest. You're very willing to explore things together, and to say, actually, just as I did earlier on when I talked about whoever it was I talked about, Anselm, I think it was, and and I said I might be wrong on this. Being open to being wrong or being open to not knowing is a really, really great quality to have. It really, really is. So I very much appreciate you for that. I am going to let you go. Have a think about it and give us a call back. And let's talk on this further, because it is for me, it's been a really interesting call, Aaron.
No, I appreciated that he admitted that maybe at the end there that he admitted maybe he was wrong, and that maybe we kind of got him. I just don't see the leap. I was having a hard time following the leap that we conceive of a great God, we can conceive of a lower God, therefore God exists. I think there's a logical leap there that's going on. Just because we can conceive of something doesn't mean it necessarily exists. We have to go out into the world and find evidence for those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And without further ado, I am going to read out these super chats that we have. which were, by the way, just for the audience's knowledge, fully available to us. I was just looking in the wrong place because I am a dick. So Cindy Plaza has sent us 10 euros. Cindy is fucking awesome, by the way. My very, very good friend sent us 10 euros saying, I predict that Jackie is going to equate a behavior that impacts others, leaving needles around, and another topic where it only concerns an individual. Change your gender. Cindy, you predicted correctly. Perhaps you should be in the Bible if you're that good at predicting things. Jazzy Bass Benny says, I like that name because I am a bass player and I am in a jazz band, so I very much appreciate that band. It's also sent us €5 saying, this patient's uncanny. Greetings from Germany. Absolutely, Jazz Bass Benny, thank you very much for your contribution. X Million, $4.99, adult film, Deeper by the Dozen, Dirty Disciple edition. Aaron, what are your thoughts on that? I'm going to ask you your thoughts on that. Because
that's pretty good. You know, Deeper by the Dozen. We got some movie references there, a couple movie references there. It's dirty and filthy. Thumbs up.
Absolutely. And Miranda Rensberg, who's been a member for 6 months, our very good friend, sent $20 saying, to clarify for Jackie, trans people are real and it's not a choice. They are born the gender they say they are. They're just telling us who they are. They are born the gender they say they are. I've read that correctly, sorry. They're just telling us who they are. Regarding heroin, addiction is an illness, not a lifestyle. Thank you very much for your super chats. You can send them. We will read them out now. I know where they are. So, thank you very much to everyone for that. I am also going to... Aaron, do you have access to the top 5 patrons? Can you see those?
Is it the same channel? There we go. Yes, I do. Oh my gosh. I get to read the top 5 patrons.
You are. Please do.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow, I'm nervous here. Let's see if I get this right. So we have number 5. We have Niel, the 604 atheist. Number 4, we have Leafed in the leaves, left in the leaves. Number 3, we have Cal Evil, Cal Evie Helveti, Cal Evie Heaven, and then we have number 2. We have Dinglayberry Jackson. Number 1, we have Oops, all sin goal already. And then honorable mention, it's going to be J.A. Calton. Thank you, J.A. Calton.
I have never heard such professional oration in all my years of doing this.
I'm out of practice. I apologize.
Thanks to everyone who gives to us on Patreon. If you want to have your name read on the air, then please consider supporting us at tiny.cc/PatreonTH. And on that note, we've been doing for quite a while now, recording the Talk Heathen after shows. So I'm adopting Aaron's inability to speak here a little bit. We've started recording the Talk Heathen after shows. There's some great conversations where you can get to know the hosts a little bit better. And myself and Aaron and possibly our backup host, Sophia, are going to be there today. So if you want to ask us any questions or learn a little bit more about any of us, especially, I especially like it when we've got a guest host on, because you get the chance where you don't normally get. I'm there all the time. Kelly's there all the time. But when we have a guest host on, it's a great opportunity to get to know a little bit about that person that you don't always get that opportunity to get. So if you want to join us, feel free, jump on Patreon. Jump on the Discord after show and let's have some fun over there. And that will be recorded for our Patreons of all levels. So let's get back to calls. I'm going to take Eject a Seat from Scotland, going right up to my neck of the woods, who wants to talk about the blatant lack of care for humanity on the whole. Eject a Seat, hello.
Hello. So it's not too common in the UK anymore, but I've noticed in America, especially with people like Kent Hovind, and other evangelicals like him, there seems to be a blatant lack of regard for humanity. For example, Kent Hovind had a little boy drown at his theme park, and his consolation to the family was giving them free tickets back. And there's a shocking amount of like the same kind of behavior, like whether it be to use someone associated with the Heathens again. What's his name? The annoying twink.
Matt Powell. Is that the one?
That's him. I like how you knew how I was
I don't know how I got it from that description.
That was pretty good. I think telepathy might be a thing.
But he's openly said a few times, I don't support the death of the LGBTQ community, but it says that they should be killed, and that's the government's job. And I would never oppose the government. And there's like a disturbing amount of people who agree with stuff like that. And like, where does humanity go when it comes to people like that?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, we cover lots of stories like that on the non-profits as an organization, the ACA. Aaron, I'm sure you look at these stuff, the articles and stuff on the non-profits all the time. You're probably more up to date with kind of the latest craziness that's going off in this area. Do you want to speak on it a little while?
It's pretty crazy. It can be pretty grim sometimes. I think I don't know. I'm not sure how to combat it. It's pretty disgusting when people, take opinions like that, where they want to attack people and hurt people for just who they are, just because they don't agree. I don't know why people just can't let people, why they can't mind their own business and live their own lives and let other people live theirs the way they want to live them. I think the only way I'm combating here by trying to be being on this show and speaking a voice and having a voice, being on the nonprofits, having a voice, putting it out there on YouTube and out in the world to hopefully combat those bad, atrocious ideas. Hopefully we can all find some way of combating them in our own way that uses our talents and the abilities that we have. It's pretty awful.
Yeah, check to see.
There's also.
Sorry, go on.
Were you going to say something?
No, I was just inviting you to speak.
I was going to say, like, I used to be. So I had a kind of weird experience growing up in Christianity. I was Catholic, but I live in Glasgow, and I was surrounded by a bunch of old Irishmen who weirdly know how to use a rifle. I'm sure you can connect the dots. So I wasn't really taught much about like how to be compassionate to other people, and I was quite violently homophobic when I was younger. But I then started to realize that like humans are humans, and like everyone should be loved. It's also about the same time I realized I was a bit more like Freddie Mercury than I thought. So I decided, like, I had left the church, and then I realized, like, seeing all of the stuff you were talking about, people like the Heathens, evangelicals in America, why don't more people realize that, like, it doesn't matter who you are. There's very few humans who deserve the treatment that so many evangelicals are willing to get. Also, Blind Limey just correctly. Oh wait, no, it's because I said I was from Glasgow. Never mind. I'm reading the chat. I thought he just guessed from the accent.
Yeah, can I just clarify? When you say you're a bit more like Freddie Mercury, do you mean you have a mustache? I'm sure that's what you meant there.
Amazing singing voice. Amazing singing voice. That's what it is. Sing a few bars for us.
There is, look, this, and there are people of lots of, I've been privileged, and I do say that genuinely. I honestly do mean that, to have been the guest of many different religious people. I've been a visitor to mosques. I've been a visitor to Buddhist temples, and you do get to see some, sometimes when you get out of these kind of public displays of stuff, I've sat above a mosque drinking tea with Muslims when the talk has turned to kind of kafirs, which means non-believers, and it's not always pretty. And sometimes religious people do have these ideas that are informed specifically by their religion, which is important to point out, that, you know, they take on these things and they want to personify them, especially when they see them as being good things to imitate. And, you know, you only have to look at the first caller we had tonight when he was spewing other people's opinions. And yes, indeed. And, you know, when you're spewing other people's opinions, it's very, you know, it's very hard to kind of always assess what you're thinking about and talking about, because you're repeating stuff. And this is stuff that's not necessarily doing that. Imitation is part of who we are as humans. So, you know, we should be careful not to criticize someone for copying someone's opinion as such, because we all do it. We all get attracted. You can see in our community people who say, well, I agree with this person who is a host on the show, and I agree with that. We tend to mirror the people we admire or the people we want to imitate and things. It happens all the time. I did it when I was younger, when I wanted to be a rock star, and I grew my hair long and dyed it black and wanted to wear fucking leather trousers like Nikki Sixx because I wanted to imitate that. So we do it. It's the human being does that kind of thing. We do that all the time. The problem arises when that imitation and pushing that forward, like you say, causes problems for other people. When it comes to lacking care for other people in humanity, and when a church or a religious organization is pushing that as an ideology, then it becomes really, really problematic, because these are things that a lot of people have, I mean, I didn't grow up religious, but a lot of people have grown up religious, so they've got this identity which they might have, and they might be lovely people. They might have, you know, you said you grew up in the Catholic Church. My wife grew up in the Catholic Church. Yeah. And, you know, I know a lot of my wife's family are really, really lovely people. They have this identity which is informed by their religion. And then when you get those people of authority, those people you look up to in the pulpit spewing bile, you then get these internal conflicts that are going off. And it's really, really important to be a person who can assess your own opinion and separate it from that. And if you have conflict, and this is where religions are at fault, and I think most religions are at fault of this, when people have conflict within religious organizations, when they're part of a religious organization, this goes through Buddhism, it goes for Hinduism, it goes for Islam, it goes for Christianity. The advice given to them is take the advice of the community, take the advice of your religious leader, stay away from the advice of outsiders. And that's very, very, it's a very dangerous kind of aspect to go through, to when you're in that situation, to be told that and have that reinforced when you've already got this identity. You can really, really give it can really give this idea of lacking for care of humanity, even if you are a good person, because a lot of the time you suppress that to show that you're part of the community, to say, look at this religious community, I'm part of you. Look at this. My identity is strong within you. Black people, gay people, trans people, on them, because my religious community is telling me they are wrong. And that is where the problem arises. That's why it's so important to have people come along. We've had two religious callers tonight. The first one was interested in only other people's opinions and spewing their bile. The second one was interested in a genuine conversation. And that is why platforms like this are so very, very important. So we can say to the second category of caller who we've had tonight, you are doing a great job. You have just done something amazing. I don't agree with you. I don't agree with your religious values necessarily. I don't agree with your the opinion that a God exists, but I agree with the fact that you are willing to have these conversations and listen. And most importantly, when something comes up that you don't understand or that gets you thinking, to be honest and say, stop, I want to think about that. Ejector seat, I'm going to let you respond to that, then I'm going to let Aaron talk for a little bit because I've talked for quite a while.
Thank you. So I do want to just appreciate what you said at the last bit there. I love callers like the second one, people who are genuinely interested in having a normal discussion or who want to learn more. Like I wear a pride pin. If someone walks up to me and asks what that is, or asks what the atheist patch on my vest means, or any of my other patches, I love to indulge them. But when people, I've had a few people try to take a swing at me because a few of my badges, they can, for a lack of a better term, go fuck themselves. And I'm so glad the world is filled with people like that second caller, and the first one is more of a rarity that we can kind of shove off into the side. Anyway, Aaron, please.
Yeah, so I think at our core as a species, we are social, we are tribal, right? We need our tribes to survive, and without our tribes, if we get kicked out of our tribes, we won't survive. And so in the modern day, we're not really well equipped to understand this because we don't necessarily need our tribes like we did, tens of thousands of years ago. And so if your tribe is your church, and as Richard was saying, if your church is preaching doctrines XYZ, well, you better believe doctrines XYZ or else you could be out of your community. And our desire to not die by being ostracized by our community kicks in. And that's why it's really easy for leaders to use fear and to use the threat to keep us in that community no matter what. And so it's really important that we as we're out in the world, that we recognize when people are trying to use fear and threat to control us because they're hooking into our tribalism, and realize that, no, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to survive, but no matter what. And hearing your story, Ejector Seat, made me think that a lot of times people have these poor opinions, let's say, about other groups that aren't them, that they don't understand, simply because they don't know somebody from that group. And usually once somebody knows somebody and becomes friends with somebody who's a different gender, a different race, a different church, a different whatever, they suddenly will tend to decrease their negative opinions about that group. And so if we want to combat these types of things, we need to stay away from people that preach fear, and we need to go out there and get to know as many different types of people at as diverse a crowd as we can, so that we can begin to understand other people and their viewpoints and where they're coming from, because then we'll start to realize that there is no single tribe. We're a global species now, and that is the tribe, is the global human race.
Yeah. Also, I'm probably going to get away now because this show's for theists to call in. But thank you so much for having me. Thanks
for calling in.
I've been watching AXP for years now, and first show of Talk Heathen, and I get in first time. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you
for calling,
Ejector Seat, and thank you for watching, and please continue to watch because it's great having people who've discovered the show for the first time, and and Glasgow is a wonderful melting pot of people as well. It really, really is. It's and it is a place where you get all different types of humanity. There's lots of different communities there, and it's a great place to kind of experience all these different different people coming together as a melting pot as one. And I think sometimes when we're having these conversations, when we're talking about people like the first caller and other people, we get this thing that these people have grown up in insular communities who've only had this one experience, and they've only seen one type of people, and these close-knit religious communities where people are ostracized if they're gay, or they're ostracized if there's trans to such an extent that those people aren't even welcome in the towns or the cities. So they're not, people haven't experienced people meeting people, being part of a global community, meeting people, talking to people, understanding people is very important in kind of giving us a wider perspective. And as we've had many calls on the shows over the years where people have said I came out as atheist, my parents were really against it, they were, we had massive arguments, and then when they realized I'd not changed as a person, I was still their son or daughter, I was still a good person, it changed their opinion of atheism as a whole, and they were more accepting. That's true of the wider community in all walks of life, and I think it's very important, and that's why, as I said during these these platforms are so important for people. Aaron, what was it like where you grew up? Was that insular? Was that a melting pot of cultures and ideas?
I grew up here in the Pacific Northwest. I was raised Mormon. And so, the Mormon community is pretty insular, but I still had to live. I was only like one of 6 members of the church in my high school. So the church is kind of insular, but I still had to attend public. So I was still attended public school. So that was way less insular. So I was exposed to more things, but it's still the Pacific Northwest. So not very diverse, mostly white people. So that's the area I grew up in.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you there was a great there was, I think it was Ewan McGregor and Charlie Bowman did a thing on the motorcycles where they went around the world quite a few years back. And the kind of, Ewan McGregor made a comment on that show, and he said, one thing I've learned about this, and they went all the way through Russia, through the US, lots of different places. It says, one thing I've learned about doing this journey is that people are basically the same. They're basically good people wherever you go, whatever the beliefs, whatever the culture. People are basically good people with the same kind of basic wants and fears and needs. And just having that basic understanding can open you up to different ideas and allow you to talk to people in a much better way, in a much more understanding way. We shall take another call. I'm going to take D from Iowa, who wants to talk about non-binary identity. D, how are you doing? Are you there? I cannot hear D. Right, let's try again. Sorry about that, folks. D, hello. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there.
No worries. Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Not a problem. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you guys?
Doing well.
Very well. So what is it you want to kind of talk about? You want to talk about a non-binary identity?
Yes, but also the kind of the legal landscape that's under threat from Christian nationalism. I'm 61 years old and only in the last month or so embraced non-binary identity. And it's really a new thing for me, but it's not, it's a new thing for me to do that, but I've known since 13 or 14 that I was not a binary human being, but until recently really didn't have the tools to explore that. And I feel like just as I've... Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, what was the reason that you kind of, you had this feeling from being very young? What was it that stopped you expressing yourself or exploring this identity within yourself for so long?
Well, I've identified as lesbian for over 30 years. And I did, during that time, I explored the possibility of transitioning. And I decided against it for two reasons. First was out of consideration for my father's reputation in a very small town where he was the chief of police. And the other was there was a very real possibility that if I started transition, my partner would have left me. So for those reasons, I examined it and then I tucked it away as not possible.
Is it because of the widening kind of understanding within society of those issues that you now feel more comfortable about expressing it?
I can give you two reasons. Number one, a huge split with my remaining family that allowed me to really start thinking of myself on my own terms rather than letting them continue to define me with grievances and issues that have been resolved for decades, but they keep bringing it up whenever they get disappointed with me. And I finally found the freedom in my own mind to just be who I wanted to be and no longer afraid of what they would think of that. And second, honestly, listening to Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience helped me build up the courage to claim that identity. So thank you, guys. And Mr. Gilliver, you in particular, along with Matt Dillahunty, Richard, you and Matt and Forrest gave me the courage that it's not personally, at least I knew that there were at least three people out there who believed I had the right to be myself.
Thank you. I'm not going to lie. I've got a tear in my eye. I really have. Look, I genuinely have. If I start bawling, please forgive me. Look,
I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. It's the bravery and the strength of people like you that give people like me the ability to do this. It's hearing the positiveness out of what comes from what we say that allows us to continue. Sometimes, really, I'm tearing up here. Sometimes allows us to, overcome, these conversations that we have with sometimes very difficult callers, and try and get, push through those difficult conversations with people who sometimes not through their own fault. Sometimes it is through their own fault, but, there's a spectrum, are ignorant of, meeting other people's needs, understanding other people's identities. And it's very important to kind of push through those difficult conversations and make sure that, everybody's voice gets an opportunity to be heard. Everybody's opinion gets an opportunity to be aired so that people can listen. And, I think it's a testament to our listeners. It's a testament to our viewers that, reading the comments week on week as I do, you can tell people, even the people who are religious, can tell who the jackasses are and who the people who are genuine are and genuinely want the best for other people, whether they're religious or not. It's the strength of people like you who will say, this show has made, and shows like it have made a difference to the way I represent myself. It's given me the strength to be able to represent myself as who I really am. And honestly, thank you for doing that. Thank you for letting us know, because it is that that gives us the strength to be able to keep going on and doing what we're doing. Aaron, any thoughts?
No, I would say thank you, Dee. You did the work. You're doing the work. You got some inspiration from somebody, but you're the one that's doing the work and learning to be yourself and learning that that's okay. That's some of the same work that I'm doing, probably not to the same degree that you've had to struggle through, but it can be really challenging. It can be really hard to learn to be yourself. But I'll just let you know that you got a lot of support out there. And I don't know if you're watching the live chat on YouTube right now, but it's going by so fast from love to you that I can't even read it all right now. So you're loved and supported, and the majority of people out there are going to love and support you, and people that are in your same situation. Good people will take the good parts of religion and be good people. They'll take the good parts of whatever is out in life, and there are good people out there that will love and embrace and support you. And this is your community if you need one.
Absolutely. And Dee, I want to address the second part of the thing you called about, which was the need to be creative in combating Christian nationalist tendencies to make laws based on religious bias. Do you have any thoughts in that area?
I do. And this is not something that's going to happen overnight, because the Christian nationalist, the form that we're dealing with now has been 40 years in the making. But we need to take steps, first off, to reverse Christian privilege in our society. And some of the thoughts I have are probably pretty controversial and would take a lot of work to accomplish. First of all, we need to, what's the word I want? We need to rehabilitate our tax code, for one thing, in order to make it harder for some organizations to claim exemption. We need to work on, I believe that some forms of religious speech can be interpreted as hate speech. And we need to find a way to combat that, and possibly even eventually include some forms of religious speech into the hate speech laws. Now, I recognize that, at least in this climate, that's probably going to be near on impossible, and it would have to be very narrowly defined. But those are just a couple of the thoughts that I have.
Aaron, again, I'm going to turn to the non-profit.
No, I think I don't have any more specific than that. I mean, we have to be really careful. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, so we have to be careful about taking any kind of positions. But I think that money equals power, and I think we need to be really vigilant about taking power away from people. That the more power someone has, we need to take that power away and distribute it so that more people have power. Whether that is money equals power, whether that be people in government having too much power for too long, we need to make sure that people do not hold power, too much power, and for too long. I think that should be the goal.
I agree. Yes.
It's really interesting because we do have hate speech laws in Britain, and there have been occasions where Christians, in particular, have been literally arrested or moved on from giving this speech, giving speeches which contravene this, or gathering in areas where people aren't allowed to gather. And inevitably they turn it into the old Christian persecution thing, where I remember one in particular, and this wasn't because this particular lady was saying anything particularly untoward, but she was doing it in a place she was saying things that weren't toward, but she was kind of doing it in a protest to a silent protest, she said, in an area where she wasn't allowed to gather, near an abortion clinic. So she was moved on because she was where she shouldn't have been. Now, there was a great outcry about this. All the kind of usual outlets that you'd expect were crying, oh, Christian persecution, she's been arrested, and all she was doing was engaging in silent prayer. But it was where she was doing it which was important. It was, and she was loitering in the area, and she admitted to have been, as she said herself, she was silently praying, and this is something that one of the things we have to combat is this kind of push, and from certain social media outlets, and some are worse than others for giving misinformation out there and pushing. I actually with this particular post on Twitter, I actually corrected, or X, or whatever you want to call it, I actually corrected, there was an opportunity to correct misinformation, and I corrected the misinformation that she wasn't moved on because she was just engaging in silent Christian practice. She was actually moved on because she was where she shouldn't have been. And it's very important to get facts out there, and correct things. And it's only by getting, as I've said many times tonight, and I'm a true believer in this, getting correct information. If we're all starting from the same page, if we're all starting from correct information, then we can have a much better dialogue. And when we've got a better dialogue, we're in a much stronger position to enact change, which is beneficial for everybody, which doesn't kind of infringe on people's personal freedoms, whichever side of the fence they're on. When we can have a good dialogue, we can work together to engage in change. And I think that's something that is much needed within the kind of, certainly in online communities, but I think it's something that would also benefit real, like your real life stuff, and particularly when you're talking about Christian national tendencies, trying to make laws based on religious basis. Get the misinformation out there. Get the loopholes out of the way, because often, and again, we talk about this on the non-profits a lot, Christian nationalists will try and shove a law knowing it's going to be rejected so that they can see where the loopholes are, so that next time they can come with a refined argument. Now, if we're working together, if we're working on a shared basis, it makes it much easier to prevent that from happening.
Definitely. And I think membership in like-minded groups is definitely important because there's strength in numbers. But I think we've also got to watch out for I'm constantly frustrated in our state's atheists and freethinkers, because it sounds like all they do is have conferences. They might host a couple of speakers a year, and then they have meetups at diners and cafes, but nobody's doing anything. And I want to find people that are active and engaged, and not just going out for coffee every Sunday,
Yeah, Aaron.
Anyway, that's all I've got,
keeping things equitable and keeping our government working for the majority of the people requires energy. It requires work. If you abandon a house, eventually it's going to crumble down and just turn into a pile of rubble. Yeah. And so we need to apply that same kind of energy to our government, our institutions, the things we want the world, the way we want the world to be. We have to put energy in to keep it that way. It's not going to just magically happen. So each of us needs to find a way that we can contribute to making the world the way we want it to be, and don't stop. and keep continuing to do that. Find the community, find the group, find the cause, even if it's donated $1, $5, find something that you can do to add positive energy into our systems to make them better.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. Thanks, guys, for taking my call. I don't want to take up too much time from other callers. Once again, thank you.
Thanks for calling,
Dee. Nice to speak to you, Aaron and Richard. Very nice to speak to you again. You were the first show I called into was Talk Heathen. I've called in like 3 or 4 other times to Talk Heathen and Atheist in the Line, and Richard, you were on that first show, so nice to speak with you again.
Thank you so much, and you are always welcome to call back. Yes. especially with those kind words. Look, not many people make me cry, so no, I appreciate it, but I do want to stress that it is, this is a community, and everybody in this community wants kind of to get these ideas, these religious ideas challenged. They want to get these religious pushes to get Christian nationalism in the US challenged. They want to get support and give a voice to people who feel that they haven't always had that voice. Dee, you are amazing. Thank you very much for calling, and you're not leaving time for the callers because we're actually at the end of the show. But what a call to end on. What an amazing call to end on. Aaron, thank you very much for joining, mate. You have been amazing.
My pleasure.
I'm sorry for talking over you a lot of the time. I've had a lot to say today.
You've had a lot to say today, yeah.
But no, I very much appreciate you joining us, and I hope the nonprofits continue doing the amazing job that they do. The prompt for this week is, what is a bad reason to summon a demon? Reply in the comments and tune in at the beginning of next week's episode to hear the top 3 answers. And of course, we don't do this alone. As we've said, we have a backup host. Sophia is our backup host. I'm going to bring you on just to say hello, and how did you think that show went today?
Hi, I think this show is great. I do applaud your patience with some callers. I also am going to just really quickly mention a pet peeve of mine, which is people throwing out old psych theorists that they don't really understand. I know that some folks do that with philosophers, and it seems like sometimes they just conflate them and do them both. But evolutionary psychology doesn't tell us what we were told today that it does. And Freud existed before we started doing actual research in the psych field. He just had some hunches. So, he didn't actually prove anything. He just had some feelings. And so just throwing that out there, that maybe we should read some of this a little bit more thoroughly. But I think that overall the show is great and ridiculously touching also. So that's incredible when that's able to happen.
Yeah,
that's what I got.
Thank you, Sophia. And of course, everybody loves Sophia, and you can catch her on an upcoming episode of Talk Heathen. Aaron, we mentioned you're on the non-profits, but tell us a little bit more about that show and a little bit more about yourself and how you fit into that whole schema of things.
Well, I try to get on as much as possible. Usually it's about once a month, and we take current events, news stories, and comment on them and talk about them and try to make sense of them and try to put forth a secular humanist, critical thinking lens and understanding the world around us and trying to convince people to make the world a better place.
Absolutely. And let's summon those love rings down from on high, especially for our last caller. Summon them with the wiggly fingers and throw them out to the audience. Look at that, coming straight from Sophia's face. The love rings this week.
I am the face of love.
She's the face of love. If you can join us, me and Aaron, Sophia, will you be in the after show with us?
No, the 2-year-old has refused to sleep, so I'm going to go.
So it will be me and Aaron and all your usual favorites in the Discord after show. If you can get along there, please do, and ask us questions if you so wish to do so. If you don't believe, this is your community, and as that last call has really, really brought home today, we do appreciate you being here. Whether you feel the need to call in and tell us about the impact the show's had, which we really appreciate, whether you just sat at home listening and thinking the what we're saying is touching you and it's making a positive influence on your life, we are your community. That is why we are here. That is why this show is here. Please feel free to reach out to us via email if you want to kind of show your appreciation off air. You are more than welcome to do that, and we do appreciate reading those messages as well. If you do believe, we don't hate you.
We're just not convinced.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live, Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.